it's just the epitome of what Star Wars is for me. It's having those moments of deep emotional connection.
And then we went to like the cantina, and then Han Solo gave our group personally a quest to go and get something from the Jawas, and then we had to go and trade something with them and kind of steal things from them.
Hello and welcome to the Angry Microwave, and may the 4th be with you. I'm Brad, with me as always it's Callum, and today what we're going to do is we're just going to run through our 3 favourite Star Wars memories that are personal to us. Now, the last few years, Star Wars fans have been a little bit up and down with the Disney product, but I think, like many people from a young age, we loved something to do with Star Wars. So what we're going to do today is pretty simple. We want you to get involved as well. Let us know the moments, the events, the cinematic achievements, whatever it may be that makes you love Star Wars. We're going to go through our top 3 personal Star Wars moments for us. But first of all, Callum, what does Star Wars mean to you?
I honestly think it's only in like the past 5-6 years that I've really grown to love Star Wars again. I mean, obviously, as a kid, I had the whole like gold VHS box set thing, and I remember it had a great documentary on about the Empire, I think, and the AT-ATs and stuff. I just remember that so vividly. Mm-hmm. But I think like kind of like growing up into like my 20s, I've had like loads of opportunities to experience Star Wars in mainly a non-film way, which has been really exciting. I mean, we'll go into it in a bit more detail, but stuff like Secret Cinema, stuff like Galaxy's Edge, that's really opened it up to what Star Wars can be beyond just the films. How about yourself?
Well, for me, it started at a young age. One of the first VHS box sets, whereas you had like the 3 VHS tapes, and it was in a cardboard box, and that was inside a box, and it was, honestly, people didn't care about the environment back in the day. But it was, for me, one of the first presents I remember opening at Christmas was my parents giving me the original trilogy on VHS. And I just remember sat down watching it and thinking, wow, what an absolutely, at the age of 6-7 years old, absolutely blew my mind. But I'll go into the first, actually, number 1 on my list, because I'm going chronological in mine. And obviously I've been a Star Wars fan since I first watched A New Hope, which is actually still my favorite Star Wars movie. I absolutely loved that. I adored it, and I just love the simplicity of it. Now, my my number 1, or the first of the 3 key Star Wars events that are important to me personally would be when I watched The Phantom Menace in the cinema at the age of 7. Now, not the Phantom Menace, not the experience as a whole, because even at the age of 7, there are things in that movie where I was like, it's a bit questionable. But that pod racing scene in a Phantom Menace, in a cinema with some great surround sound, with people of all ages, because I was there with my dad, and I could tell people that were his age were getting really into this, and they didn't even have kids with them. And that's when I really knew, wow, Star Wars is actually really big. But that pod racing sequence in a Phantom Menace, even to this day, other than, funnily enough, The Impossible, which is a film wasn't expecting to bring up today, it's probably the best use of sound, or the best cinematic experience that I've had, solely because of the sound. Now, for me, I just remember sat there thinking, wow, the movies are great. I really love coming to the cinema. And for me, that's why Star Wars is really important to me, because we might not really be bringing up the sequel trilogy too much today, but I remember, or will we? I don't know your list. But I just remember thinking, and I've always associated going to the cinema to watch Star Wars with just feeling giddy and just feeling like I'm actually at an event and this is an experience. And it's just the peak of cinema, whether it's the graphics, because people will laugh at it now, but the use of green screen and the effects in A Phantom Menace were, nothing like I'd ever seen before at that point, and it was a cinematic achievement.
I mean, and also, like, I know everyone has a go at Phantom Menace for being this whole CG fest. There's so many miniatures in that film you don't realise unless you start watching, like, all the thousands of documentaries that are out about it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Absolutely.
I definitely resonate. Like, I remember going to see every Star Wars film as a kid with my dad at Cineworld Ashford, and there'd be all these kind of like people dressed up as like Boba Fett and stuff, and I've got photos of me as a kid in the foyer just surrounded by it. And I remember weirdly being sad when the third one came out, Revenge of the Sith, because I don't know how old I must have been, maybe like 10 or 11. But I just remember being sad that was the last Star Wars film that I was going to see in a cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Is that we're not talking about necessarily the quality of the movie, but for me, that was the moment that I felt like, wow, this is. I feel like there's a culture behind this, and I'm part of that. Yeah, this is pod racing. But even when he sat there after he's just made his little pod racer, and he's like, it's working, and I'm just the sound of that there. I was so immersed. And it was like nothing I mean, I wouldn't say it's not like anything I've seen at the cinema before, but for me, it was just, it made me love Star Wars even more because I loved the VHS tapes, but there's nothing like watching a Star Wars movie on the big screen. And maybe we'll talk actually a little bit about it later on, but the Star Wars fans are vocal. And what I appreciate about the Star Wars fans is that we can sit here and say, we didn't necessarily. That sounds like a pod racer outside my front door. I don't know if you can hear that. But we can say this is a bad movie. But this sequence, even now, I could go to the cinema and watch that sequence because it blows me away every single time. So for me, that was the moment that I went from really digging Star Wars to absolutely, I wanted to go to the cinema again and again and again just to watch that one scene.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, the Phantom Menace, weirdly, because we must have been the same age as Anakin when those films came out, right? Around 5 or 6? Or you must have been a few years older. But like it's kind of weird that like we were like the second generation of Star Wars fans that came from the Phantom Menace coming out. And now there's another whole third generation with the sequel trilogy. And I just think that's kind of amazing that we've kind of like, we're in this weird kind of like middle age of Star Wars where we grew up with the prequels and now we're experiencing the sequels in our like adulthood. I just think that's like it's so fascinating seeing how there's all these different generations of Star Wars fans. And I do think that people like us definitely do give the prequels. We look back in nostalgia quite a bit.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
which makes them watchable more than probably other people would seem. But definitely, yeah.
For sure. So feel free to let me know in the comments that I'm completely wrong about loving the Phantom Menace at all. But for me, yeah, that one scene and just the first time I went to see Star Wars in the cinema is one of the reasons why I love Star Wars today. So what about you? What's first on your list?
So first on my list, if we go back to 2014 and 2015, I believe, when Star Wars Celebration was happening in America somewhere. It might be in Chicago for some reason, I'm thinking. But they hosted a satellite event at the Leicester Square IMAX. And it was hosted by Warwick Davis. Weirdly enough, they put it next to a giant IMAX screen. And as plenty of jokes were made at his own expense about that whole situation. But it was such a magical experience. It was kind of like the first time I'd been to an actual Star Wars event outside seeing the films. And they live streamed a Force Awakens panel. And within that panel, they showed the first ever trailer for The Force Awakens. So this is like no footage come out at all from The Force Awakens at all until this point. And it was the Chewie we're home moment. Seeing that in an IMAX full of people for the first time was an experience that I'll never forget. It was truly goosebumps. It was the first like Star Wars material that we'd seen live action for at least 10 years. And it was just, honestly, thinking back, it was such a magical experience to see that with all those fans. And they replayed the trailer 3 times back to back. And every time it just got louder and louder cheers. It was honestly such an extraordinary moment to be a part of. And to be there seeing that in a group of people. Because there's one thing watching the trailer for the first time at home, like reacting to it like we just have with the Marvel trailer that came out yesterday. But to see a Star Wars trailer for the first time when we've been starved of like live action content, it just hit home. And I do think that number one, The Force Awakens is arguably the best Star Wars film, in my opinion. Which is, I know, quite a controversial thing to say. But also that first trailer just gave everyone what they wanted. It had like Han Solo, Chewbacca, had the new characters, had new creatures in, new planets. It just had everything that people wanted.
And that for me, I guess that's kind of similar as well to what I was saying about the Phantom Menace, is that you're not just kind of consuming it. It's an event. You're there. You're in was it at the IMAX you went to watch this trailer? Yeah. And so you're getting for the first time this new material of Star Wars that, like you said, you remember being in the cinema and being sad because we didn't think we were ever going to get Star Wars again. And just feeling just the magnitude of that trailer as you're watching it, and you say you watched it 3 times. So was there an overwhelming sense of joy in that room? I should imagine then.
Yeah, literally the moment Han Solo says "Chewie, we're home," the whole place just erupted, and I do think that's one of the greatest lines in cinema in terms of just like that emotional resonance that happens when it was spoken. It was just unlike anything else I think I'll ever probably see again, because I honestly don't think there's any other franchise where there was that kind of like expectation for it to come back. And I do think people kind of went through this whole grief process after the prequels happened, probably, where they were like, "This is it," because George Lucas very much was like the book is closed on live action material. Yeah. And then obviously this somehow happened. I didn't see it coming. I remember exactly where I was when I heard the news that Lucasfilm had been purchased, weirdly, and that they were going to make more Star Wars films, because I just couldn't believe it that was going to happen.
I remember, actually, funny enough, maybe that should have been on our list to be an honourable mention. I remember exactly where I was. I was in my dorm at university, and I opened up my laptop and I saw breaking news: Disney purchased Lucasfilm. And didn't they announce there was going to be a movie coming out along with that announcement?
Within
and
2 or 3 years as well.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, this is blowing my mind. We're going to get a live-action Star Wars movie. It's going to take the length of my degree to actually be in a cinema and watch it, but we're going to get a live-action Star Wars movie. I cannot wait for this. And the thing is, the great thing about Star Wars fans is I know that some people outside of the Star Wars fan community can say that, well, they don't like Star Wars because there's always something to moan about. It's like they just want good Star Wars. And that was like you rightly said, there is an expectation with this franchise, despite the trilogy, that people that were maybe our age now, when the prequel trilogy came out. So we loved it because we were under the age of 10, but people in the 20s, approaching 30, that grew up with the originals or whatever, there was an expectation where it's like, I want a quality of trilogy that we've had in the past. But even though they didn't like the original, the prequel trilogy, there's an expectation that I'm really excited to see Star Wars again. And that was it. I watched that trailer for the Force Awakens so many times, and I agree with you. I think it is one of the best Star Wars movies. But given now we've got 9 of them, I don't know if that's a particularly high bar to.
I mean, I'll go back to what I was saying before. Like, I remember so vividly, like certain moments where I was surrounding the whole sequel trilogy. I remember I was on a train near Southampton the first time the black and white photo came out of all the cars sitting around that giant circle. Yep. And we saw Adam Driver. Like, I had no idea who Adam Driver was at the time. John Boyega. I'd only ever seen in Attack the Block, I think is what it's called, the high-rise film. It was just there's so many memories of all the different stages throughout that film. Like, I remember tickets going on sale, and I booked like maybe 4 tickets for the opening week, because I was convinced that they would all sell out. And to be fair, I think it's the first time in my life I've ever seen so many screenings sell out across a week, because I think people just booked up as many like performances as they could.
Well, it was the first time in my life going to watch, and bearing in mind that we've talked about film, we've been involved in making films, we've loved films for a very long time. As you can go back and watch some Angry Microwave material from 10 years ago. We love film. We go to the cinema and we go to midnight screenings. With The Force Awakens, I had never been to a multiplex that has 12 screens that was sold out at the same time. Like, literally the buzz and the queue. And I remember thinking, well, this is also great for cinemas. Cinemas and the exhibition industry needs a good Star Wars, needs hype around Star Wars, because there is literally nothing like it. For me, it's like a mini Star Wars celebration at a midnight screening.
The atmosphere is electric.
Which leads me on to my second point, which is Star Wars Celebration. So I believe it was 2016 or 17. I can't remember which one it was. We went to Star Wars Celebration. It was between The Force Awakens and before The Last Jedi came out. So at this point, there was a lot of good grace with Star Wars fans, because even people that thought that The Force Awakens was maybe a safe choice, there weren't many people that I met that thought that The Force Awakens was bad. They thought it was maybe a safe film, but a good, safe film. Now, you and I absolutely loved it, and we went to Star Wars Celebration. And it's a shame they're not doing Star Wars celebrations across the world anymore. They're sticking to the United States every 2 years, are they?
Yeah.
But when we went to Star Wars Celebration, my word, it was electric. And we went in the earliest hours of the morning to the point where there was no sleep that was had. We had to queue up for hours to make sure we got tickets to the particular halls to see the things that we wanted to see. And it was electric. We got to see Carrie Fisher on stage. She was a darling. She was absolutely hilarious. She owned that room.
Was there?
Yeah, Warwick Davis. Plus, he's involved in everything. I love Warwick Davis. He was hosting. Now, did we see Ryan Johnson?
I can't remember if we saw Ryan Johnson, but I remember we saw a panel at the end of the day, and Kathleen Kennedy was there, and they brought out Phil Lord and Chris Miller, because I forgot that they were involved in Star Wars at that point.
Yeah.
But at that point, Solo was kind of being talked about, and then they unveiled who was going to play the new Han Solo. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name if you want to.
Alden Ehrenreich.
That's it.
Alden Ehrenreich.
And they brought him out, and they said, this is our new Han Solo.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the thing that gets me about this trip is we booked it like 2 days before. We weren't planning on going. And it is honestly one of my best memories. It was I remember we were all very poor students at the time, and we barely I think we shared a hotel room that was dirt cheap, and we didn't even stay in the hotel room because we had to get so early.
Yeah. Well, I remember the hotel room actually had spiders. It was in a really rough part of London. We had to get 2 trains to get back into where the function was. But honestly, we were there from I'm going to say about 4 or 5 in the morning, because we were queuing, because people were queuing so early to get, like I say, the tickets to the halls, to the functions, and it was busy then. But the adrenaline carried us through the whole day, for that entire day. But what I loved about Celebration as well is that it's part Star Wars con, essentially, and part museum. And some of my favorite parts of going to Star Wars Celebration was actually seeing the costumes, not just of what we've seen before in Star Wars, but of Rogue One, and just seeing the costumes and the ship designs and the creature designs of a film that hasn't come out yet. There was something for everyone, and I absolutely loved it. And the one thing I will say is that going to Star Wars Celebration, people put some serious money and effort into their costumes, and kudos to you, because I couldn't tell who was like an official part of Lucasfilm trying to promote something, and who was just Jenny from down the road who spent 3 years working on this design. And mate, honestly, the costumes are.
I mean, part of me was kind of glad that I had no spending money at the time, because there was so much stuff I wanted to buy when I was there. Like, there was so much merch and everything. Like, independent stores were there selling their own kind of Star Wars stuff. I remember you brought the signed Force Awakens art book, which looks incredible.
I loved it.
Yeah, the whole experience of it, like, it literally was like a full day in one of those cinema lobbies for a midnight screening. Just everyone was so happy to be there. And,
it was just one of those things where there was also not just a Star Wars fan, no matter where you looked. There was someone who was important wherever you looked. So we went from the hall where the Carrie Fisher was. They were doing the announcements. And I'm pretty sure Ryan Johnson was there, because I remember there being a certain level of expectation for there to be some kind of trailer, even though they hadn't started shooting at that point. So there were so many people there. We left that hall. We went back into the main function room. We turned to our right, and there's a stage there, and we're loitering for a couple of minutes. And suddenly John Boyega's just on the stage. And it's like, well, wherever I turn, there's someone that I look up to. And it was just a brilliant experience.
Yeah, that Star Wars show stage, I think, it's at every celebration. I think it was probably my highlight, because you were there. So to give some context, for like the big panels, like, you literally had to get up at 5 a.m. I think it was now like 1 ticket per main panel. But that like Star Wars show stage on the centre floor, I mean, I saw Carrie Fisher there, and it was so close, it was so intimate, and they would get like all these massive names come up to the stage in the middle of the expo hall, and whenever this person appeared, like, you would just hear like crowds erupt when they saw their kind of like film icon hero just appear. And I think that was definitely one of my favourite points. I think for that it may have been the inside of the Falcon was kind of dressed up as a stage, and it was I absolutely loved it. I think it was one of my best weekends. I mean, he went for one day. I could have done all 4 days, and I think all the tickets were sold out because I think I
Yeah.
priced up going back on the day after.
But it was, and if you're states bound, or even if you're not in the United States, I do honestly think that a convention like this, so Star Wars celebration, absolutely worth it. And I'd love to go to Comic Con one day, but this is the closest thing that we've had over here that has felt like a genuine superstar field, legit convention, and I absolutely loved every second of it.
I mean, can you imagine what it'd be like now with like Mando being out, the Ahsoka series is coming out? Like, I feel like it'd be 10 times what it was back then because because for live action, I kind of like the awareness of Star Wars has literally multiplied over the years since we last went. So when we went, there was only one new Star Wars film out compared to now when there's 5 live action films which have been out, which is kind of mad thinking about that, the amount of stuff that's come out since.
So what is next on your list?
So next on my list is so last year, no, in 2019, I was lucky enough to go to Galaxy's Edge when it was kind of half open. So that was when basically the land was open, but there was only one ride functioning. And just going on that Millennium Falcon ride called Smuggler's Run at Disney, it was a hell of an experience. Like, so it's kind of like have you been on Star Tours before? Or do you know what Star Tours is?
Yeah.
So it's basically that, but the Falcon, and you control the Falcon. And the moment that I got to go into hyperspeed and pull the lever, I was literally like a 5-year-old kid again. It was so magical. Like me and my dad went, and Dad was in the left seat and I was in the right seat, and it literally just like jumped to hyperspeed. You pull the lever, and then it feels like you're in the Falcon going to hyperspeed. It is unlike anything else. But the whole Galaxy's Edge land is just so picturesque, and I mean the ride was great, but just being in that land and being immersed in it was unlike anything else. I mean, we learned by the second week we were there to just go at night time, and it was so magical at night, like all the lighting, like seeing a full size Falcon being there, the noises. I mean, the noises is unlike anything else there. Like, you don't really realize it until you start listening, but like you've got like things flying above you that you can hear, like the wildlife. There's just so much to discover, and I'm so excited to go back. Hopefully, maybe this year, but probably next year, and see like the new Rise of the Resistance ride, which apparently is again unlike anything else. But just the fact that Star Wars has created this land which is canon and has so much like material around it it enriches it so much. And I know it gets a lot of hate because it's not something that it's not a land from A New Hope or any of those classic films. But for me, it gives so much more intrigue because of that, because it feels like that I'm exploring a land that will have connections with series going forward, and books and audiobooks and games. That is just, for me, it's just an incredible place to kind of like explore Star Wars at my own pace and kind of like something unique that I haven't seen before.
But that's the great thing that Star Wars has that a lot of franchises don't, is that it is an experience. Now, whether we're talking about a trailer release or experiencing it in the cinema, going to Galaxy's Edge is a tangible experience. And funny enough, someone said to me the other day, why are people crying when they're going back to Disneyland? Like, it's, why are they so happy that these billionaires are about to get even richer, this, that, and the other? But I think what people don't understand, and people that aren't really invested in these universes, is that you want to be part of something. And when you go there, whether it's a celebration, whether it's a cinema, or whether it's Galaxy's Edge, you are part of something. And you're part of something with all of these people that have one thing in common, and that's their love for Star Wars. Now, I'm not fortunate enough to have gone just yet. I am hoping to go sometime soon. But it's on my bucket list of things that I really want to do with my life. I want to go there because I just want to be so ingrained in something that I've loved from the age of 5-6 years old that I'll probably cry. I don't admit. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, even my dad cried. Like, he probably hate me telling you this, but like he teared up. Like when you see the Falcon for the first time in full size, it is something that you will never see anywhere else because it's gigantic.
Yeah.
But it's stuff like seeing like Chewie like work on the Falcon underneath, really just like, it's not like, oh look, it's Chewbacca over there, like signs pointing towards him.
Yeah.
The characters just roam the land. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, you see Kylo roaming. There's a spy, which I think is in one of the books, that's like roaming, so it's kind of linked in with other media. Stormtroopers walk around, like Chewie and Rey. I mean, the Rey looks exactly like her. It's insane. But it's honestly like, just walk around, and there's so many stories that aren't like signposted. I mean, like one of those things, I built my own lightsaber there. Yeah, it cost me $200, which is very expensive. But it's such an experience. Like, you're not buying the material basically for it. You're buying the experience. And you go into this whole little area, and then there's, I don't want to talk about it because if you don't know about it, it's so much better to just experience it while you're there.
Yeah.
I mean, to give some context, my dad went in with me, and then he basically went straight back through and got his own lightsaber again because he was that like wowed by that whole experience. Yeah.
And I'm going to keep repeating it because the reason why we're doing this video is because we're talking about our favorite moments and experiences with Star Wars. And the great thing about this franchise is that there's so many on offer. Now, we haven't even talked about, we've got 2 more each. We'll get to that in a second, but we haven't even talked about the games. And I grew up playing the games. You haven't spoken about some of the novels that are out there that I haven't even got around to reading yet, but a lot of people are raving about. You know, there's so much to get ingrained and engrossed in that there is something for everyone. And Star Wars is more than just movies. It's the fan theories we make in our heads. It's the expectations we have when we go to the cinema. And there's so much to love about Star Wars. And that's why I think we should celebrate May the 4th. And that's why it should be a bank holiday, even though we had a bank holiday yesterday. So my last one now is a little bit of a change of pace. We're going to be talking about Disney Plus for a second.
Okay.
And one of my favorite moments, one of my favorite experiences as a Star Wars fan, despite everything that we've just spoken about, The Mandalorian, when Luke Skywalker, spoiler alert, if you don't have the internet, how are you watching this? When Luke Skywalker turns up in The Mandalorian. And I'll tell you why, is because it wasn't just because of the way that was structured and narratively built, where, you know, he's flying in and then one of the characters says, you know, there's only one sign of life. And you're like, hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. And then the you know, you see the hooded cloak and you're like, hang on a second. No. And the goosebumps start coming out. Then you see the lightsaber, the music's hitting, everyone's in tears. But for me, it's actually more than just the fact that it was a great episode of television. I think after the year that we've had, we haven't had a chance to go to the cinema and be fanboys. We haven't had a chance to go to the cinema and just love something so deeply that it's made us either cry or have goosebumps. And so that's why I really loved what they did in that episode of The Mandalorian, because it made me feel like, well, it made me forget the year that we'd had. It made me feel like I was living in this universe. It made me feel an emotional connection that truthfully Star Wars hasn't really had with us in a long time. Now, not to make this a bit of a Debbie Downer episode, but we were talking off screen a couple of days ago about how we went to the cinema to watch The Rise of Skywalker, and people actively started laughing at that film towards the end. Now, that actually made me sad, because it's not really, you know, some people love that film, and I'm not here to say whether it was a good film or not, but for me, I live for the moments like, let's talk about Endgame for a second, like, I'm, you know, on your left, and just that whole sequence where you get goosebumps and you just feel yourself welling up. I haven't had that in such a long time because of lockdown and COVID, that when this happened and I felt like that, it's just the epitome of what Star Wars is for me. It's having those moments of deep emotional connection to what is essentially a CGI character in the end.
Yeah, I mean,
I just loved it.
I mean, like, when the films come out, it's not like we all have an instant moment after the films, because they're always kind of like staggered release. Like, so maybe the US gets it a few days early, or we get it a few days late. With the Disney Plus stuff, we all get it at the exact same time. And I remember for that whole day being absolutely buzzing. I was watching videos on YouTube. Yeah. I was engaging on tweets. And it just made me so happy for like a full day. And like you said, it was like middle of pandemic. Things were going super bad here in the UK. And just having that day where everybody... yeah, just having that day where everybody was just happy and just talking about how much they love Star Wars. I don't think there was anybody at all that wasn't happy with that as a Star Wars fan. People literally just went, "This is amazing." Some people said the CG was a bit dodgy, but the moment was amazing. I didn't see anyone out there saying that it was bad at all. It was just such a unifying moment for that community to come together. And I do think that that was the turning point for Star Wars recently. So obviously,
100%.
because everybody just basically went, you know what, Star Wars is back, people. We've got, obviously, Ahsoka. Ahsoka kind of leads into The Mandalorian in season 2, so everyone was really excited about where all these new characters were going. And it just felt like everyone was like, okay, here we go, fresh start, let's go, Star Wars is back. And that was such a magical day for me to just be involved in the whole kind of like online culture of Star Wars and seeing that happen.
Yeah, honestly, it's what we live. It's what we live for. No fan of anything wants to see bad content. We want good content. We want to feel the way that we felt with that Luke Skywalker scene and that whole sequence. We want to feel like that. You know, it goes back to the first point that I made, that when I went into the cinema, my first outer body experience in the cinema was just being so in awe of the sound design of A Phantom Menace. You know, that's what we live for with Star Wars. We live for these moments where we're like, that was a brilliant piece of content. You know, that was just incredible. And that's what we got with that.
Yeah.
So what are you going to round up with today?
So similar to Galaxy's Edge, so this was, I think, 2014 and 2015, around the same time. It was for any Star Wars films to come out, any new ones. And Secret Cinema were putting on a production of The Empire Strikes Back. So if you don't know what Secret Cinema is, you kind of step into this whole like theatrical world. You engage with the characters, you go on quests, you do all sorts. And then at the end of the evening, you see the film in a location that's relevant to what happened within that film. I've got so many stories I could go into, like so many unique stories that you would never get at Galaxy's Edge because of the amount of people going through. I think maybe Secret Cinema has maybe like 1,000 people per night, which in the grand scheme of things isn't many. And I remember, so for this, we basically went to Tatooine. We met Luke's parents and basically kind of got sent on quests. And then we went to like the cantina, and then Han Solo gave our group personally a quest to go and get something from the Jawas. And then we had to go and trade something with them and kind of steal things from them. And then we got a passage to go onto a ship, which then took us to the Death Star. And then it was all just like, the locations were incredible. It was at Canada Water at the Printworks, which is basically an old printing press. And like Tatooine just felt so warm, and there was sand everywhere and lighting. And then like when you went to the Death Star, obviously that printing press is a giant like mechanical kind of like hallways and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's also where they shot weirdly some of Avengers, not Infinity War, the one before that.
Civil War?
No, the
Endgame?
No,
Age of Ultron?
Age of Ultron is basically where Andy Serkis' like little ship thing is. So it's all kind of like that. And I mean, I'll show some footage now, hopefully over us. But like at the end, there was a giant X-wing that literally flew down. It was a full-size X-wing. And I've obviously just got so many like personal stories that nobody else, I feel like, doesn't have to do with that event because you literally interact with them. And I mean, and the actors were incredible. They, like, you literally thought that you were speaking to Han Solo and Chewbacca. It's just, yeah. It was honestly one of the best nights of my life. And having that, I'm just so lucky because I feel like these days they wouldn't, because Disney would want too much of the profits from this kind of event. But it was literally at that turning point where Galaxy's Edge, I don't think had even been announced at that point, and it feels like it was a sort of trial one for Galaxy's Edge. But that whole evening was incredible. Like, you had to like smuggle yourself in and wear like stuff over your face before it was cool to do that. And yeah, it was just it was such a unique night. And I mean, the trailer for it definitely shows. And also, this is the other thing. Secret Cinema doesn't show any video or any imagery of the event at all until the event's done. So basically, everyone goes in blind. There's no there's also no phones which are allowed in the event. Like you literally have to seal them. And if you get caught with it, you basically you get kicked out of the event. So that's the other thing about the night. Nobody had their phones. Everyone was talking to everyone and interacting. And as great as Galaxy's Edge is, it's a wave of phones when you walk in because everyone's seeing the Falcon for the first time. But just having that evening without phones in a group of friends, experiencing Star Wars in a way that I'd never done before, it was so unique.
And there are so many unique ways to consume Star Wars, and I think that's, like I've said earlier, that's the great thing about this franchise. Let us know if there's anything that we haven't really spoken about today, or let us know what's specific to you. You know, what's your favorite memory or Star Wars event? Like I said, we started off with going to the cinema with our parents to watch our first Star Wars movie, all the way through to we're grown adults and we're dressing up like Han Solo and going to conventions and stuff like that. You know, what is special to you when it comes to Star Wars? Please do let us know, because we would love to hear your thoughts on that. If that is everything for today, Callum. Yeah?
Yep.
Good one. Until next time, I've been Brad. He's been Callum. We've been the Angry Microwave. Goodbye.